Hello, crafty friends. This is Anya General with Ink, Paper, Scissors. Welcome back to my channel. Today is all about stencils. I'm sharing 3 fun and easy ways to add texture to your stencils. A simple twist that can completely transform your stenciled images and card backgrounds. It will make your designs pop. I will be creating 5 cards showing you just how easy it is to make stunning cards by adding some texture and interest to your cards. But first, if you love card making and creative techniques, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. It really helps my channel grow. I have also linked all products I'm using today in the video description below, and there's also a visual supply list to make it easy to find everything. And if you would like to support my work, I would be so grateful if you use my affiliate links when you shop. It is no extra cost to you, and it helps me keep bringing you free crafty content. Now let's get started. The first technique is the double stencil technique. I'm using the Mega Blooms Layering Stencil Set from the Floral Friendship Kit by Gina Designs. And I'm cutting my cardstock down to a 6" by 6" panel. You could cut your cardstock larger and make multiple cards. I will be making 2 cards with this technique, so I opted for a square panel. Then I'm aligning my large flower in one corner of the cardstock. I'm using Light Orchid ink by Gina to ink blend lightly over the whole flower. Then I'm adding the Festive stencil on top of my stencil. I'm holding it down firmly, but you could tape it to your surface and make sure it doesn't move. I am brave today and just decide to hold it in place. I ink blend Light Orchid ink with a heavy hand on top. Now look how cool these results are. I love this technique. It gives the floral image a lot of interest. Then I use the first stencil to help me align my second layer stencil. The way you do this is by putting the second layer on the bottom and the first layer stencil on top, and making sure they both are perfectly aligned. Then you align the first layer with your stenciled image. When you have it in the perfect place, you press the stencils to your surface and then lift your first layer and your second layer is aligned. On this layer, I am ink blending medium orchid ink over my stencil. I want the pattern to still show a little, so I make sure I don't apply too much ink. Next, it's time for my leaves. I align the leaf layer and use Jelly Bean Green ink to ink blend over it. Then I use the Festive stencil to add texture to my leaves with a heavier hand of Jelly Bean Green ink. Then it's time for the 4th and final stencil layer. I align it with the leaves and then ink blend fresh asparagus over it, and my flower is complete. I love this color combination. These are some of my favorite colors by Gina. Gina's ink line is superb because her inks smooth out so nicely once they're fully dry. I repeat this process 3 more times with different stencils for texture. For the second flower, I am using the Nebula cluster stencil by Hero Arts for my texture. For the third flower, I used the rectangle patterns by Pink and Main. You could also use the Masks and Fillers stencil by Gina I was not able to find mine, but your results should be pretty identical if you have Gina's stencil. I will play some music and let you watch the process, and will return later to cut this panel down for my cards. Hopefully you can now see why I said that you could use a larger panel and get several cards using this technique. For my first card, I'm using Master Layouts 1 and I'm using the 2 largest rectangles. I am using the smaller of the 2 rectangles to cut into my flower panel. Then I'm cutting the largest rectangle out of green cardstock. You could use black here so you get more of a pop, but I wanted this card to have spring colors. I adhere the ink blended panel to my green layer and then add some fun foam behind it. Next, I use the leftover piece and cut it down to about 2 inches by 5.5 inches. I adhere it to the left side of my card panel and then get some pink glitter cardstock and cut a 1/4 of an inch strip to adhere to my card to give the border in the middle a finished and polished look. I will finish these cards later. Let's move on to our second technique. For the second technique, I'm using the Gina K curved floral banner stencil and die set. I die cut the flower panel out of white cardstock and the outline out of black cardstock. I place the white flower cluster onto my Altenew sticky mat. Then I align the stencil on top, as that is much easier than stenciling first and then die cutting. I'm using light lilac ink to ink blend the flowers. For the berries, I use medium lilac ink. Then it's time for our technique. This time I'm stamping. I take a line textured stamp from the stamp market called Circles and Sentiments. This stamp is already retired, but you could use any textured stamp here. Look through your stash to see what you have. I ink up the stamp with medium lilac ink. Then I pick up the stamp and stamp it with my fingers into the flower. You don't want to use an acrylic block here, because you need to push with your fingers into the flower petals, and this would be hard to achieve with a stamping block. Next, I move on to align the greenery stencil with my die cut, and I used Jelly Bean green ink to ink blend over it. I use a small detailed brush to give the leaves extra dimension and shadow at their stem. For the middle of the flowers, I use Tangerine Twist ink. Then it's time to adhere our black outline on top of my ink blended flower cluster. Pro tip: if there are areas in your flower cluster where the white peeks through, use an alcohol marker in a similar color to fill in. No one will ever be able to tell the difference. I ink blended a second flower cluster using the same technique and then started assembling my card. I will play some music and let you watch the rest of the process of finishing my card. I will return to introduce you to our last technique. For my third and final technique, I'm using the Cottage Garden Stencil set by Concord 9th to inkblend my panel. This time I decided to use a light pink A2 panel as my base. I aligned my first stencil. This stencil has 3 layers. I'm using Jelly Bean Green ink and Tangerine Twist for my first layer. Then for my second layer, I decided to use a combination of light lilac ink and light orchid ink together to give the flower shades of pink and purple. Again, I love this color combination. It is stunning. For my third stencil layer, I'm using medium lilac ink and medium orchid ink. Again, combining the two to give the flower variations of color. I'm using a small detailed ink blending brush to add some deep shadows of purple. Next, it's time for a technique. I'm using my Spellbinders die cutting machine and their universal plate system. I looked through my stash and picked out an embossing folder by Tim Holtz. I put my panel inside my embossing folder and run it through the die cutting machine to give my ink blended panel some texture. And look at the stunning results. I love this look. I cut my panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches and I adhere it with some fun foam to my card base. I add a sentiment and some Pinkfresh Studio Ombre glitter drops in the color Pixie Dust, and my card is complete. I repeat this technique with the Gina K Tranquil Lotus layering stencil set using the same colors. I will let you watch the process and return to finish up the card. For this card, I decided to use another old embossing folder called The Kitchen Weave by Cuttlebug. I will look if I can find something similar and link it below for you. I put my panel into the embossing folder and run it through my die cutting machine. I love the results. I keep this card simple. I adhere this panel to an A2 card base and add a sentiment from the Gina K Delicate Flowers stamp and die set. I add some gems and my card is complete. And there you have it. 3 easy ways to add texture to your stenciled images using tools you probably already have in your craft room. Let me know in the comments which technique you're excited to try first, or if you have a favorite texture trick of your own. Thanks so much for spending your time with me today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.